We're introducing legislation to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada, capping the market for handguns. As a further part of this new legislation.
And with that, Justin Trudeau is working to get Donald Trump reelected. Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America.
And you ain't black.
The first time ever any...
What are you people? We're Americans.
We are Americans indeed. My name is Vincent. This is Middle America, where we are not left-wing, we're not right-wing, we're just right. Supposedly. Rich Yonkers is first. Ian, you just missed it, brother. I'm sorry. Dear listener, if you don't know who we are, you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome. It's an honor to have you here. Dear listener, I was raised a conservative Republican evangelical. I don't really know what I am right now. I'm pro-life, which means by default I am anti-war, and it means by default that I'm for Medicare for all. And it also means by default that if you're pro-life, you're going to hate all this gun death. Now, me personally, I don't know how to solve this gun problem in America. Specifically, what I'm talking about is the mass death that happens on the regular. Keep in mind, dear listener, over the Memorial Day weekend, 52 individuals were shot in Chicago, and 9 of them expired. Obviously, 7 days ago, we also had the Uvalde shooting, and then a week prior to that, we had the Buffalo shooting. So we're in a very, very bad situation. I'm at a loss. My personal position is I don't really care. I'm a Christian, so I believe that the Bible is the only inspired document, which means anything in the Constitution to me is up for grabs. If it's shown to be detrimental to human flourishing, or if it's shown to be causing harm that could otherwise be avoided. If one of those two principles is hit, then erase away. Take a magic marker and erase the Second Amendment tomorrow. I don't care. Obviously, the issue that I have is I don't believe that that is going to curtail any of the gun violence. As I shared myself in the Bronx, New York, guns were illegal. We all had them. So I don't know what the solution is. I do know, though, what the solution is not. And one of the things that's making me, I don't know if nervous, hopeless, nihilistic, I don't know if that's a term. But I find myself more in line with my friends on the left on this issue relative to can we not hold the Second Amendment as some sort of sacred rite or ritual? And when I say rite, I mean R-I-T-E, like a religious kind of devotion to guns. I'm more on the left side, which is to say, it seems to me a lot of my left-wing friends were saying a lot of them believe that a gun ban would end gun violence. I don't really think that that's the case, but if it can curtail it in any way, then I'm for it. The reason I'm becoming more and more nihilistic about any sort of reform in that regard happening is because it's clear to me that the folks on the left do not understand the mindset of the people in America. And on top of that, it seems to me that the folks on the left not only do not understand the mindset of most Americans in regard to the Second Amendment, but resent them for it. Let me give you an example. We're going to watch the video together, dear listener. Shout out to Elio Mike. Elio Mike was a law enforcement officer, put his life on the line for his community of people that he didn't know and didn't know him, but was willing to put it all on the line for, I think, 20 years, 13 of that in special project stuff. So shout out to Elio Mike. But Elio Mike is one of these people that this is a guy that's been in law enforcement. And when you're in law enforcement, you see the worst. You see the worst of people. And so I understand why Elio Mike would be a big Second Amendment guy. But Elio Mike is sort of the prototype of a, strict Second Amendment guy for reasons I just described. Now, I don't know brother personally, but in the few conversations we have had, I think he would probably say that I gave a pretty decent description of why the second is so important to him. Now, look at the title of this latest video from TYT. Here's the title: Gun-Worshipping Republicans Triggered, in all caps, by Canada's new gun control laws. Which, of course, triggered, I'm sure, gun control laws, ha 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 ha. Now, dear listener, this might be very emotionally satisfying, considering that a lot of us are really angry, frustrated, and upset about this situation with these kids. It might be emotionally satisfying to use terms like this, you gun worshiper. But this shows me that any hope of any sort of real gun ban or gun reform is dead before arrival. Because this tells me that TYT and all these other folks, and say what you want about TYT, but they're massively influential. Massively influential. That can't be denied. And so, how do they characterize people who would bristle at Justin Trudeau's gun ban? And if you missed it, if you were late, dear listener, we started the video with Justin Trudeau's speech where he basically said we're putting a moratorium or a freeze on all handguns and all the rest of it, right? It's clear to me that folks on the left or whatever do not understand how such a ban would fall on the ears of a guy like Elio Mike. Now, you can dismiss him as a gun nut. You can say he's crazy. You can say he's a worshiper of guns. That's fine. But guess what? Mike is going to be able to vote in the midterms. Mike is going to be able to vote when his local state has some gun reform thingamajig up there. And how do you think he's going to vote? Is there even any attempt to reason with Elio Mike? Oh, no. All right-wingers, Republicans, these gun nuts, they're crazy. You can't reason with them. You see, even using the term gun nut makes it so that you can't really communicate with these people. They can't be reasoned with. They're crazy. They're psychotic. Like Jenk said, anybody who owns an AR-15 is unhinged, he said. Anybody who owns an AR-15 is unhinged. Okay. So we get it, Jenk. We get it, TYT. You resent people who believe in gun ownership. You resent people who hold the Second Amendment in high regard. You resent those people. They're all dumb. That's great. But guess what? They can vote. And there is no attempt whatsoever made for any sort of conciliatory measure with these people. Okay, let's see how that turns out when it's time to vote. Okay, so here's the gun-worshipping Republicans thing from TYT. Let's talk about it.
We're introducing legislation to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada. In other words, we're capping the market for handguns.
That was Justin Trudeau announcing some of the details, and there are a number about what they are doing up in Canada to deal with gun violence, going way further, lapping us, more than lapping us here in the US in terms of that. I mean, look, there's other details to it that we'll get to, but that core detail that they are ending the new sale of handguns. Caroline, can you even conceive of, like, what if Beto O'Rourke said that on a debate stage? Just like the idea.
You guys remember Beto? Hell yeah, we're taking your AR-15. That was the most. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. I'm gonna get myself. Let me hold back on that adjective. That was the most animated I've seen Beto. Let me say it that way. Hell yeah, we're taking your AR-15. That was the last time. And then the next time he got up, he got a big little yay because he was speaking at a university. You know, one of these university with a bunch of spoiled rich kids, spoiled rich white people, spoiled rich black people, spoiled rich Asian people. Yay, Beto, that's right. You're such a badass, Beto. All them college kids clap for him. You know what happened in the next debate? They said, Ya Rasulullah, we appreciate your decree about the guns, but how do you plan on collecting said weapons? Considering America has 400 million of these things. And in the last 4 years, 20 million AR-15s. Just AR-15s. Now, you guys know Bushmaster, et cetera, et cetera. We're just using the term AR-15 as a catch-all for assault-style rifle, whatever the hell that means. You guys know what I'm talking about, though. But all he said was one brand. Okay, the Armalite, that's it. Okay? So the next week, Beto showed up. They said, okay, Ya Rasulullah, how do you plan on collecting these weapons? No answer. And then that was the end of Beto. That was the end of him. He was finished. Little white lady showed up and said, you're not going to take my guns from me. You're not taking my guns. I'm from Colorado. You're not taking my guns. Okay, so there we go. Canada is lapping us. I think trying to make a correlation between us and Canada, I think, is a fool's errand. But you know, I understand. I don't really understand what the gun situation is like in Canada. I don't know if they have mass shootings in Canada on the regular. I've never heard that before. It seems to me that this situation happened. The Americas are the North Americans are upset about it. And so since we share, I guess, the same landmass with the Canadians can then implement some gun control so it doesn't happen here. I'm not really sure why at this point he would choose to do that, other than folks are very emotional. And what John is doing, I think that John is his name on TYT. What John is doing is he's just looking at this from his perspective, from his desires, and he's not thinking through the ramifications of the last 3 years, particularly with Justin Trudeau, and how the convergence of those ideas would make this a very horrible moment if you want any gun reform in America. There doesn't seem to be an understanding of these people, and that's because obviously he hates them. Cenk is the leader of that crew, and Cenk has no problem stereotyping all Republicans, stereotyping all police, stereotyping every gun owner. All of us are unhinged. All of us are crazy. None of us can be dealt with. Yada yada yada. And I keep saying us. I'm not part of that group. I'm a Medicare for. Here's the thing, guys. I've been an activist on both sides. Okay. Now, for the right wing stuff, the pro-life stuff, we literally almost ended up in the Supreme Court. We went to circuit court, district court. We almost went to the Supreme Court. We had 4 states that sponsored our whatever. On the left wing side, we've not even drafted the legislation yet for the stuff we're trying to do here, whether it's qualified immunity, police unions, healthcare, housing. We don't even have a fucking bill drafted on the left side. Meanwhile, when I was working with the pro-life folks, we made it all the way up to the Supreme Court, completely manipulated the media, whole 9 yards. Why? The people on the right, or conservatives, whatever you want to call them, when they're in their back office meetings, they're strategizing. They're planning, they're plotting. They sit there and watch hours and hours and hours of TYT and all the rest of it because they're trying to come up with a profile of a person we're trying to convince to convert to our position, because our strategy was forget the Supreme Court. We'll just do it state by state. We didn't think that we were gonna. I know the people that wrote the legislation in Louisiana personally. I talked to them. They're the most organized set of people you will ever see. Conversely, on the left, it's so hard to even get people to a fucking meeting. A meeting. You gotta chase people down to get a meeting, much less being able to get together, draft up a resolution, draft a bill, get people to show up at city council, get people to testify at city council, tape that shit, put it on YouTube, manipulate media. we're not even off the ground. But on the pro-life stuff, it was a fucking well-oiled machine. So that's one of the reasons I don't believe that we're going to get this off the ground, because this side of the aisle is too emotional, not enough strategy. And Justin Trudeau doing this gun grab ban is the worst thing you could possibly see happening. And if John was thinking, this would be a warning video to leftists or liberals and politicians and left-wing soldiers on the ground. This would be a warning video. Was awesome and our country's horrible. There's a glaring elephant in the room here. Some of you probably have already seen it, but let's continue.
That we would potentially stop the sale of all new handguns. Can you imagine that?
No, I mean, given what happened to him when he suggested taking away assault rifles, and that sort of tanked whatever election he was running at the time.
Sort of. That was the end of it.
I really, really can't. I mean, you know, we can talk further about this. I think that Canada is doing, you know, personally, I think it's a wonderful thing. I really don't know if I don't know. I'm curious what you think, what sort of lessons we can learn from
Yeah,
this.
very interesting.
I
I'd like
happen
to
to
learn
think
a
our cultures regarding guns and so many things are so different that it is a little hard to extrapolate anything from this decision, other than, yes, we all always want to move to Canada at any time. But yeah, let's get into it.
Well, then go. I never understood that. We all want to live in Canada at some point. Go. They'd be glad to have you. I'm not saying, look, I'm not one of those people that says, hey, if you have a problem with America, get out. If you ever got a problem with America, where democracy, stay and fix it. But you just said you'd rather live in Canada. So live in Canada. Me? I'm a live and die in America. I love my country. We continue.
Yeah, definitely. Look, it is at the very least a reminder that there are governments that function, whether we might agree with the particular thing that they're doing or not, and we can get into that. There are, in theory, governments that can identify a problem and actually do something to solve it. That's novel. It doesn't really happen in the US. Even in the midst of the pandemic, we have.
I don't know what he means by that. What do you mean by that? There are governments that are functional and can solve problems. It seems to me that Mr. Trudeau has way too much power. That's what it looked like to me. But if you're calling that functionality, then fine. But this is a genuine question. If you agree with this stuff that this guy just said, do you want the United States president to have that kind of power? The Second Amendment, look, it's an explicit amendment in the Constitution. It's explicit. For example, the right to abortion is nowhere in the Constitution. There's a right to privacy, and then they smuggled in abortion through the right to privacy. But what we're talking about here is an explicit right, explicitly articulated. You're saying you want the American president to just stand up on a random Tuesday and say, hey guys, no guns. We're not gonna vote. We're gonna talk about it. Your state representatives, none of that makes sense. Just no, because I said so by divine fiat. What? I'm not sure I want a world like that. The problem is that John is only thinking about this issue. He's not thinking through the ramifications of what that means. John, what if you get some rabid right-winger in there, and he's got that kind of power, and so he could just come up and say all gay marriages are now invalid? Huh? Come on, guys, think with me. We continue.
Very little action from our government to do something about it. This is, I think, more immediate, faster, broader than we've seen for any problem. Like since, I mean, I don't even know how much credit I want to give to the ACA. Like it just doesn't really happen here.
Well, that's what happens when you live in a country where major decisions have to get made by the populace. Of course, you could streamline anything you want when you have sort of an autocratic situation or a situation where you're not going to be resisted. You can streamline the hell out of everything, John. But when you have a democracy, then what you actually have to do is convince people that you're right. And I think John is more right than wrong on the gun issue. But He's not, notice, there's no attempt here to reach out and convince anybody of anything. And he doesn't understand how this kind of framing falls on the ears of a guy like Mike, who you need to vote for you.
But let's first give people more details on what it is that they're planning to do. So Canada had already planned to ban 1,500 types of military-style firearms and offer a mandatory buyback program that'll begin by the end of this year. Trudeau said that in theory, you could keep your assault weapon, but it will be made inoperable. It will no longer be a firearm at that point. They've also expanded background checks, and Trudeau had this to say.
Look, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. And look, it looks to me, again, I'm not really understanding why they're making all these laws in Canada. I'm not saying I don't understand, like, that's so stupid. I'm saying I don't know enough about Canada and its relationship to guns to speak intelligently about it. All I'm saying is, in my view, the less guns in circulation on a holistic level, the better. That's my view. But again, I don't know if John is going to address the fact that there's 400 million of these devices in our country. There's no analogy to that in Canada or the rest of the world, probably combined. All right, we continue.
The changes. We cannot let the gun debate become so polarized that nothing gets done. We cannot let that happen in our country. This is about freedom. People should be able to go to the supermarket, their school, or their place of worship without fear, and it's expected that.
I agree. I think everybody agrees with that. Nobody disagrees with that. We should be able to go to our school, place of worship without fear. But what Trudeau and John doesn't understand is that when Eric from Tennessee brings up his 20-year-old wife and his smelly little 2-year-old Casey, and they drive to church, he feels safe and secure because he's got a Sig Sauer on his hip. So he looks at that beautiful woman, and he looks at that little nasty little baby, and he says, if anybody tried to do something reckless in church, I'm going to send that boy to Allah. And he feels safe. Now look, you feel safe because you live in a country where they suspended the handguns and all these assault style weapons are going to be excised from your country. It's going to be illegal. And psychologically, that makes you feel better. I think that that's valid. But Justin, there are people in America that feel safe because they're strapped. There was one period in New York City where I never left home without a heavy backpack, if you understand what I'm saying. And when I didn't feel safe. Now, I was crazy, and the situation was crazy, and there were a lot of real societal ills that if those things would have been addressed, I'd have never put my hand on a weapon. But I was terrorized, and the only thing that made me feel safe was my heavy backpack. Justin, John, these people don't strike me as people that have ever been in that kind of a circumstance. Now, should I have had that? No. And you know what? I would have loved it if the DTs on the train would have been doing random bag checks, but they didn't. Because I would have never touched that thing if I didn't think people were going to kill me. But I was convinced people were out to kill me. It's just a fact. So you feel safe going to school and church because there's no guns around, and a lot of Americans feel safe because they have guns. That's just a fact. My issue here is not that I disagree with Trudeau or John. My issue is there's no attempt to appeal to the people that are going to have to vote for this shit, John, unless you think that Mr. Biden is somehow going to come from on high with Wahi from the seven heavens and tell us I have eliminated all firearms. Unless that's your scenario, then you have to start working on how you can convince Mike that we don't need all these AR-15s in our country. John?
All of this is going to pass because of the nature of their government at this point. And Look, there's a lot that's different about Canada from the US, obviously. It's not that nobody in Canada has a gun. Nobody, wants to defend their home. Nobody goes hunting or sport shooting or anything like that. It doesn't feel, at least as an outsider to Canada, that there is the obsession, like the worship of firearms, the deliberate attempt by right-wing media and politicians for many, many, many years. And by the way,
there it is. So the Canadians are sport shooting. They're rational with their guns, but you Americans, you worship your guns. There it is. Unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable.
Aided by the Democrats up until very recently. Democrats, like, we now think of them as being more opposed to guns, but they were super defensive on that up until the very recent past. Convincing people that a gun is not just a symbol of liberty and freedom, it's the only thing that will keep it. It's the only thing stopping the US from devolving into tyranny or whatever.
Now I gotta tell you, to all my friends out there, if the United States government decided that we were no longer gonna even pretend to be a democracy and we're gonna be out and out, it would be out and out tyranny. I'm sorry, but you and your cosplay fleds, you guys are cosplaying as Gravy Seals. You can't even keep a 6-minute pace for a couple miles. But you and your buddies, you guys go out in the woods and you cosplay as DevGru operators. You really believe that if the United States government wanted to lean in with the full weight of the U.S. military, that you would stand a chance? Dear listener, the Ukraine has a military, and Ukraine has detachments of extremely motivated people. And they got their asses kicked. And I told everybody, the Ukrainians are going to get blown off the map. Now, some of you are saying, oh, no, Vin, no, the Russians, they can't communicate, their tanks break down in the street, yada, yada, yada. I said, that is completely irrelevant. None of that shit matters. The Ukrainians are going to get blown off the map. People were laughing. I said, you're just saying that because you're ignorant. You know why? Why do you think the Ukrainians were calling for air support? No-fly zones. They were calling for no-fly zones because the Russian superiority in the air made all their gains on the ground completely and totally moot. Dear listener, unless you have a detachment of F-16s, ICBMs, you've got a stockpile of chemical and biological weapons. You've got an AC-1, you got a couple AC-130 gunships. Dear listener, you and your friends that cosplay out in the woods are not going to do a fucking thing to stop that. This idea that your little M4, your little modified whatever, you're gonna face the full weight of the U.S. government. Ridiculous. If they really wanted to do that to you, it's a wrap, bro. Honestly. However, recently I've had to modify that position, and I'll explain later because there is a slight modification to that. Okay, the point A still stands though. You and the Gravy Seals are not going to be able to stand up to the U.S. government if they really wanted to impose that kind of Sharia on you. But I'll talk about my modification in a second.
I don't think that they have the impact of political money coming in from the gun lobby, or just the gun, like the equivalent of the NRA being so influential on the political culture of the right, Caroline. So as you said, it's difficult to.
I think this is an overestimation of the power of the NRA. The NRA does not have that much power or influence. I know people in the NRA. It's like the little membership club you joined at on Fox. I don't know if we had this Fox 51 Kids, and it was a kids club, and you got something every month and all the rest of it. The NRA is not. They haven't had that kind of influence for a very, very long time.
Exactly what lessons to draw from this, because there is so much different between our two countries, despite the fact that we border each other. But they are going very far. There's a lot of different components to this.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting. A part of me is kind of big.
There it is. Repubs freak out over Canada. They're just freaking out, and they're just dumb.
It's just rude at this point, Trudeau. Like, we get it, you guys, you have a lot of power and interest in doing this. What I'm curious though is he says, we can't let this polarized topic, get us from not enacting gun control. And I really am just curious if it is as polarized in Canada, or he's sort of just doing this now, I don't know, in response to what has happened in the United States. And I do think that this is a time where we, as people who are in support of regulations like this, have to look at the numbers and have to look at the makeup of our country. And for whatever reason, we do have a gun-obsessed country.
Okay. Again, I don't like those adjectives, but okay, at least she's saying we need to understand how these people think. Very good.
Sales are higher than they have ever been. There is only 19% of the country thinks that there should be a ban on handguns. So whether or not we
a ban on handguns? A ban on handguns. I hope to God that there is somebody around the Biden administration that would warn. You remember when they had that Easter Bunny going after the president? No disrespect, but you remember they had the Easter Bunny going after the president, make sure he didn't say anything ad hoc. If that slipped out of his mouth, we're gonna see Republican rule for the next 12 years, and I am not bullshitting. Holy shit, ban handguns! Yikes!
Agree with Canada's recent position. We have to acknowledge that it will not work in America.
Thank you.
And in that regard, I do think that we have to have a more holistic approach to our conversations about.
People will die. People will die in bunches if you try some shit like that in America. I was having a conversation with one of my buddies. He's actually a Canadian, and he's like, just ban the guns. And I said, well, how do you plan on collecting it? And he basically said, well, the police come to your door and take your guns. I said, bruh, they will shoot the police out. No, they won't. I said, okay, do me a favor and Google Ruby Ridge. Do me a favor and go to YouTube and type in Branch Davidian Compound. Do me a favor and Google BLM v. the Bundys. The Bureau of Land Management versus the Bundy. They tried to do some eminent domain thing. And the little white guy said, hell no, y'all ain't gonna do this. This is during the Obama administration. They said, hell no, y'all ain't gonna do that shit. Nah. And so the government came in. So the Bundys got on Facebook and Twitter and said, hey, here's my address. Anybody that loves their country and hates government terror, come through. And hundreds of people. I had a friend, he called me up. He's like, Vin, we gotta go. I said, hell no, bro. I'm not going nowhere. Stay the fuck where you are. What are you doing? But anyway, these folks got on planes and strapped up and pointed rifles at the United States federal agents. And the feds backed down and gave that man his land. Now, of course, I was in the airport coming back from a trip, and one of my buddies said, hey, check this video out. It's going to get published in the news very soon. And sure enough, homeboy got circles, feds encircled him, and they took him out on a traffic stop because shit like that cannot go unpunished. Just like what happened with the Branch Davidians. They sent the ATF in there, and the Branch Davidians put 2 bodies on the ground because they went in there. They were trying to go in there without a warrant or something like that. And Koresh and those boys put 2 of those folks on the ground. This is fucking America. That's not how it works here. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just telling you that if you try to do some shit like that, come on, bro. You had people, and it wasn't just white folks either. Red, yellow, black, and white. All these militia converged on the Bundy Ranch. You can't do that in this country. I'm sorry, bro.
Control. And I think that this is where the mental health, this is where arguments about the soul of our nation really do need to start coming into these conversations, because as I said, during the pandemic, trust in our institutions, trust in the police, it all was crackling. And there, whether we like it or not, Americans really believe that they have to have a gun for.
Well, when you constantly lie to people, when you told people not to work, and you kept them at home, and then you transferred billions, possibly trillions of dollars to a half of 1% and gave all these rich people the ability to buy up property, so that now we've turned America even more into a fiefdom than it was before. When the Center for Disease Control leaves out a very specific demographic in the COVID numbers because it didn't go with their primary thesis, and then we have to find out later, and your explanation was that it wasn't ready for prime time because we were too dumb to interpret the numbers properly, and there's no accountability for any of you. Yeah, that might erode public trust. I don't know, ma'am. I don't know who you are. It's the first time I've seen you on TYT, but maybe it's the narrative. Now, as I said yesterday, I still don't believe it happened, and it's going to take a lot to convince me. But the current narrative right now, I don't know if you know, is that there were 19 police officers in a fucking hallway and kids getting shot, crying out for help, calling the police, crying out for help. And the current narrative that most Americans believe is that those officers stayed there and didn't do shit. So, yeah, I think there's a couple reasons for Americans to say, I need my guns. Now, I'm not one of them, but you don't need to convince me. You need to convince Mike, and you're doing a piss poor job of it. You're sitting there acting like Americans are paranoid and they don't trust their government because they're crazy. Oh, no. Let me tell you something. If you still trust your government, if your default is to trust what you hear, when I say your government, I'm also talking about mainstream media. If you trust that, you honestly, you need to see someone. We continue.
Whatever reason. And so to sort of like tout Trudeau and Canada and say, you know, very vehemently that this is what we need to do, this is the only path, it's not only unrealistic, but I think that we're missing a really big conversation about the health and soul of our country. And we need to sort of dig deeper and really try to understand why. I mean, you know,
the health and soul. No, I don't think we need a conversation on the health and soul of our country. We don't need to do that. We just need to understand why people believe that they should be armed to the hilt. And we need to understand from people who disagree with us how to get some common ground, because I am certain that nobody, whether you're on the right or the left, wants to see or hear about what happened in Texas ever again. So how about we start with what we agree on, what we disagree on, and how we can both get to the destination of a much more secure America for kids, and so that our teachers don't have to be tier 1 operators to get your kid home.
I know a lot of reasons why people have so little trust in our institutions. But again, I think, you know, going back into our communities, looking within ourselves, this decision by Canada really, I think, is something that should shine a light on America's obsession with guns, and not in a way to shame gun owners, because the numbers don't lie in terms of their support. And
not in a way to shame gun owners. Look at her, she's smiling in her face, because she knows that that's the current strategy, because this gun ban from Canada has exposed America. And so she knows how that comes off. So look at her, she's like, not to parade the look at her face again, like, because she knows that is exactly what the fuck she meant. Look, watch again. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Remember that joke on Seinfeld? Look at this, y'all.
Not in a way to shame gun owners, because the numbers don't lie.
What was that thing on that show? Shame. Look at her. Oh my God.
In terms of their support. And again, I think it's depressing, but I think it means we need to shift our tactics a bit.
Okay, well, I'm gonna close with this. This is some of the immediate reaction on the right, because we're covering this so that you know about the facts of it, everyone. But you are gonna hear a lot from the right about what Canada is doing. Not the facts, just insane hyperbole. So for instance.
That's right, because that's all they do. Dear listener, I am currently at mark 722 in this video. He is going to dedicate exactly 1.01 seconds, 1 minute and 1 second, to the Republican response to this. instead of saying, holy shit, this is how this is going to come off to those people. This is where those arguments are valid. How do we address that? Watch what he does. Watch what he does.
Thomas Massey saying the dystopian future Trudeau is manifesting in Canada is coming to America if US citizens don't get involved. Somebody cracked open their thesaurus today. Okay, let's see. Wendy Rogers says Canada is turning into New Zealand and they're also trying to do it here. Sound the alarm. We must never give up our guns. Yes, Canada is turning into yet another country that doesn't experience gun violence like we do.
What a silly, silly thing to say. What does she mean when she says Canada is turning into New Zealand? And how does that relate to guns, John? This is what I'm talking about. Oh, they're just dumb. So easily to dismiss. That's a person who's influencing a bunch of people who you will need to vote for some sort of gun restriction. John! Holy shit. I cannot tell you how many times we would think and plot and plan about the 24-year-old white liberal with green hair with the LGBT tag on her book bag or whatever on her way to grad school, and how to engage that girl to talk about life, because we were drafting bills, etc., to get voted on. The organization, the tactics, the media manipulation. We were a well-oiled machine. That's why I was telling people abortion is going to be gone in our lifetime, because it's just too much of a sophisticated group application of some very tried and true methodologies that work. And I knew the other side didn't have any of that. Now here I am on the left side of the gun issue, and I'm very, 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 very nihilistic that we're ever going to get a solution anytime soon, because here we are. This lady brought up a very, very good point. John, we continue.
And Dave Rubin says Justin Trudeau is a really, 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 really bad man.
Ridiculous.
Is that a parody? Is that what he really like? He's really doing his best. It's difficult.
Okay. That was the end of the video. He said nothing really to move the conversation forward. Let me show you guys something. Let me show you guys something. The lady said New Zealand. New Zealand and Canada New Zealand and Australia are like back to back. One of the things people bring up all the time to me, they say, Vin, Australia did a gun buyback program. What about that? And I go, yeah, man, but I understand they did that, but that doesn't appeal to these people. You know what really lands with these people? Here. And this is what the woman was referring to when she said New Zealand. Now, again, Australia and New Zealand, pretty much the same deal. Don't tell them that, but it's pretty much the same thing. Look at what happened in Australia. Now, Tasco is from New Zealand, so he can tell me if anything similar happened in New Zealand. You guys remember this? Watch. This is very important. Australian police arrest quarantine escapees. That was 1 December 2021. That was at the end of 2021. Australian police, this is from the BBC, I think it is. Australian police arrest quarantine escapee. Australian police have arrested 3 people who broke out of a COVID quarantine compound in the middle of the night. Okay? So when this woman says this is like New Zealand, this is what she's talking about. You put people in quarantine camps and you wouldn't let them out, and when they escaped from the government-initiated quarantine camp, you pursued them and arrested them. That's what she's talking about, John. You gonna tell me that's not a valid concern? It happened literally not even a year ago. December 2021. Three Aboriginal teenagers escaped the camp. They did a statewide manhunt. These are Aboriginals. These are indigenous to Australia. Everybody knows the story. There was a statewide manhunt because these kids broke through the COVID camp. So this woman says this is like New Zealand, and all you can do is say, "Oh, stupid Republicans." Think, man. This goes into the profile of the person you have to convince now. Oh my God. Michael Cooper says, yep, that also happened here in New Zealand, Vin. Okay, all right. All right. So how do you craft a message? How do you craft a message, John, liberal everywhere, that addresses that? By the way, this is also the reason I had to modify my "You and the Gravy Seals" mockery. Now, watch what happens here. Now, Sagar and Jeddies, he's a right winger, but honestly, he's a right winger the way I'm a right winger. I mean, I think he's pro Medicare for all. He's kind of fuzzy, but the last thing you could say about Sagar and Jeddy is that he is some crazy gun nut. Listen to what Sagar and Jeddy says in his show. I was very surprised when I heard this right before.
Obviously, this has ignited a massive conversation.
But listen to what Sagar and Jeddy says in his commentary. It blew me away. I said, holy shit. And it made me modify my position on the Gravy Seals and all that. Now watch.
2021 and 2022. Go to a gun shop, there's a line out the door. And, you know, I am very hard pressed to say that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, David Shore, looking at the Pew Research data just in Gallup of 2017, where Democrats had a +8 identification, said that Republicans in America had a +4 trust advantage whenever it came to guns. And I think that the most salient point of which you pointed to is that, look, we have rising crime rates, we have broader social societal trust. In the last 2 years, our president literally tried to stay in office, you know, and denied the election result.
Okay, right there. Sagar's on the right, and he's specifically referring to Trump as a crazy person who denied election results and destabilized the country. Okay? So Sagar is not a gun nut. He's not crazy. He's one of the few Republicans that will get on TV and say, bro, you got voted out and you try to pull some tyrannical bullshit. Listen to what he says right after this. So it's unbelievable to me.
And also, a bunch of cities burned to the ground. I mean, I think that's probably the best environment to not give up many of your gun rights. Not to mention the COVID regime. I mean, looked at what happened in Australia. Yeah, they had gun buybacks, and then they literally threw their citizens in camps with very little civil rights recourse.
I don't know that those two things are related, but I think it's...
it ain't gonna happen here for a reason. I think that that's an important thing.
It speaks to, well...
It ain't gonna happen here for a reason. Did you see what that man said? Say what you want. Sagar's not a gun nut. He's not. But he's also not blind. He saw what happened in Australia and New Zealand. And he said, it ain't gonna happen here. You know why? You know why. So now I have to augment my Gravy Seal thing. Look, if the US government decides they're gonna just do a full-on out Nazi Germany thing, yada, 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 there's nothing you and the Gravy Seals are gonna do about it. It's over. However, that kind of action in this country is very unlikely to happen. What's more likely to happen is the bullshit that you saw in Australia, and I'm sorry, but they would never, ever be able to do that in this country. And from that regard, I have to surrender the point to the Sagars and the Elio Mikes of the world. It is true. It's a deterrent. And I believe, you can't tell me otherwise, that if we were not so gun obsessed, that we would have had a lot more draconian measures applied to enforce the quarantine stuff. Don't you remember? You remember this scene, dear listener? And this is why I said that Justin Trudeau is working with the Trump administration. I don't know if you guys remember this scene, but here it is. I'm going to check to see. This is a video that Sori and I did. This is where the Canadian mounted police, you guys remember this situation? This woman was an indigenous woman. You know, Justin Trudeau with his blackface and stuff, he's very woke. He's a very progressive guy. Just wore blackface a couple of times. I mean, he was a dumb kid. Oh, my bad. He was the fucking professor. But Justin Trudeau and all the rest of them, you know, he's very woke. He's very progressive. This is what they did to an indigenous Native American, Native Canadian lady who, by the way, is an elder in her tribe. This is how they treated the Queen Mother of the tribe. Here we go. This is Canada in all of its infinite glory, dear listener. This happened a year ago. Can you guys hear that, by the way? I know I'm late for another appointment, but this is a very, very important video. Can you guys hear that stuff in the background? Let me see. Audio, broadcast system audio, all the time. All right, let's do it again. You'll be able to hear it now. Okay, check this out, guys. Here's Justin Trudeau and his mounted police. Here we go.
Hey, stand down! Oh my gosh! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Look what you did! Look what you did to her! Look what you did to her! Look what you did to her! You trampled on the lady who is inaccessible! Shame on you! Shame on every one of you! Shame on you! Damn you!
Okay, that's enough. They broke that woman's ribs. She was there, and if you guys could have seen the previous clip, the woman was singing, "Give peace a chance, give peace a chance." She wants peace for her kids, for her children. She wants a better Canada for her children. 2 seconds later, in come the mounted police, and they stomped the hell out of this woman, broke her ribs. So let me get this straight. Hold on, one more thing. Here's Jimmy Dore. I know some people have lost their minds and said that Jimmy Dore is a right winger now, which is ridiculous. Here's Jimmy Dore on Justin Trudeau.
All right, so guess what's happening up in Canada, eh? Justin Trudeau is turning... Well, here, let me tell you. This is what people are saying. If Vladimir Putin did what Justin Trudeau has done to try and suppress the truckers, media and politicians across the Western world would be condemning his actions right now. Not only that, we'd be sending arms to Ukraine Nazis. That's how serious it would be. Even I tweeted about this.
This was Jimmy Dore's thumbnail. That was Jimmy Dore's thumbnail for Justin Trudeau. Okay? Because you remember those truckers, you know, those violent truckers blowing their horns really loudly and singing "Give Peace a Chance," smoking some weed and all that stuff. They were a public menace because they didn't want the vaccine passports. You know, that guy jumped on Tucker's show and the official had the guy's information before he even gave the card because there was some sort of chip tracking him or whatever. Now look, if you're comfortable with that kind of statism, that's fine. But Americans are not taught that way. Americans are taught that that's a form of tyranny and it should be resisted with every inch of your being. Now, believe what you want. I'm just telling you, when an American looks at this shit, we're going, holy shit. You're telling people where they can go. You're restricting their movement. You're shoving people into camps. People escape the camps. You go out there on a fucking statewide manhunt to go and rearrest them against their will. And you're trampling old ladies because they're committing the crime of speaking out against you. What the fuck is going on? It wasn't just right-wingers that were angry with Trudeau. Their version of the ACLU came out and said that Trudeau was acting like a fascist dictator.
If they can deem protesters terrorists so they can freeze their bank accounts to squash their protest, then they can and will do it to you, or Black Lives Matter, or any time a protest actually starts working. This is what people thought Trump would do, but now Dems are actually cheering this on.
Correct. That
is correct.
But because the wrong fascist was committing the fascism, left-wing neo-lib media did not call that for what it was, but then instead decided they were going to demonize everybody, the Sikhs, The Native Americans, they were all Nazis because there was one guy waving the Nazi flag, supposedly. So the whole movement was Nazi, even though it was a multiracial, multinational, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-orientation movement. They got all painted as Nazis. Meanwhile, Azov Battalion are good guys. Do you see? So when you do that, it creates an echo chamber so that you can't see obvious shit. That's what happened with TYT just now. It's obvious why she would say these people are like New Zealand and Canada. And she's right. Justin Trudeau went way above where he should have. And he faced no consequences for it. Now he stood up and said, I'm capping all the gun sales. So how does that fall on the ears of a guy like Elio Mike? Put all that together.
And here's Comrade Misty Putin. She says, I'm not sure what it is going to take for people to see that the things happening around you are about establishing complete narrative control and squashing dissent of all kinds.
So is Comrade Misty, is she a right-winger too? Comrade Misty? She's a right-winger too. No. She's just a freedom-loving person, and she saw that bullshit that Trudeau pulled was fucking against liberty and freedom, and it was wrong. And if Trump would have done something like this to an LGBT march, you know what left-wing media would have said. But because the left-wing media apparatus functions in this sort of circular, incestuous sort of pool of echo chambers, these people really start believing their crazy ass narratives. They really, really believe that those people were Nazis. They really have done that. They've programmed these people. So they only believe their craziness. So they literally can't see it when it's in front of them. That's why the dude from TYT, the woman came out and said, New Zealand, Canada, he should have been able to make the connection. He wasn't able to make it because he's been so brainwashed by these people, so he can't even understand the opposite perspective anymore. That's not going to get us where we need to be.
That is
Good
a huge
Lord.
problem. Well, Comrade Misty, you're supposed to focus on how much you hate the person next to you,
Correct.
not so much on how you hate the people above you, okay?
Right.
You're doing the wrong thing. You're supposed to turn on your neighbor. Okay. So what is going on? What are all these tweets about, Jimmy? I'll tell you. Canada, Trudeau invokes emergency powers. I was told they're emergency wartime powers. That's what I first read.
Yeah, the last time.
Invokes emergency powers in a bid to end the protest. So the protest is working, and the oligarchy is shitting their pants, and they don't know what to do.
Right.
So now they're doing things that they accused only Trump would do.
Correct.
What are
Correct.
they doing? Well, let's.
So Mr. Trudeau, the protests were working. They were gaining popularity. All the videos were circulating of these people cooking up soup and hot chocolate and dancing and singing and smoking and shit. And then you had all these truckers who said, I am vaccinated already, but I'm not going to use a vaccine passport. I'm not with that. You can't restrict my freedom of movement. I'm not playing that game. Like, there's got to be an end to this government overreach into me. So these people started that up, and Justin Trudeau, the leftist, squashed free speech with a draconian implementation of that law. So much so, like I said, their own ACLU said, you went overboard. Okay? So Americans are seeing that because technically Canada is on the American continent, right? American Republicans, and let me tell you something, come closer. There's a lot of leftists that saw that entire situation. Because I don't care what any of you say. Jimmy Dore's absolutely a leftist and said, fuck that. Fuck Justin Trudeau. Rightfully so. You think that only Republicans are worried about that? You honestly think that only Republicans are worried about getting shipped off into some camp? You think only Republicans care about that? You think only Republicans care that one guy decided he was just going to completely shut down a peaceful protest? Don't you guys remember the economic warfare? Do you remember when he invoked that War Powers Act? He's like, look, we will freeze your money. We will freeze your bank account. If you employ some of these people, we will go after you. If you donated to some of these people, we will go after you. Don't you remember when Justin Trudeau was doing that to people for protesting? Economic warfare against his own citizenry. You trying to tell me only Republicans are worried about that shit? This is why Democrats are going to get absolutely massacred. And I'm telling you, if Joe Biden even hints at something like this, all that Roe versus Wade energy is going to evaporate. I'm telling you. I don't even think the Roe v. Wade anger is going to last long enough to the midterms. You're paying $15 for eggs and $7.25 for gas. But if you... You have no idea what's about to happen if you do some dumb shit like that. We got to come up with different solutions, and the only way to do that is talk to one another. But TYT and the rest of you, go ahead and demonize these people. Go ahead, demonize them. Say they're dumb, they're stupid, they're gun nuts, or this, or that. Go ahead. They're going to vote, though. And the way it's looking now, they're going to win. I don't agree with them. I would much rather have less guns in this country. But I'm sorry, the days where you get to mischaracterize people and all that shit, go ahead, man. But they're watching and they're listening, and they're gonna vote, and they're gonna vote with some fucking authority. You know, I keep saying vote harder. These people are gonna vote as hard. You won't believe how hard these people are gonna vote. There is no acknowledgement from the blue side that Justin Trudeau is not some... Justin Trudeau is the epitome of the un-American dictator. Justin Trudeau is 50,000 times worse than Donald Trump. Yes, I said that. Yes. I don't give a fuck what Trump tweeted. I care about policy. And this guy's policy was insane. He declared fucking economic warfare on his own citizens for expressing themselves. You got people in Australia that I don't even know the procedure. You go to their house, jam them up, throw them in a van, and put them in a quarantine facility against their will? That actually happened? So all this shit happened in the last couple years, and then on top of that, you've got supposedly 19 officers who just sat there and watched those babies get executed. And you want to tell these people they're gun nuts, they're obsessed, and they're crazy for saying I need to strap myself up because I'm worried about fucking psychopaths like Ramos or psychopaths like Trudeau coming to fucking put me into some camp or destroy me economically. And the only thing we can say to those people is, you're a gun nut, you're dumb. Listen, if you're on that side, I don't think you're a gun nut. I don't think you're crazy. And quite frankly, as a guy who's known for being a debater and an arguer, I have no points to respond to you. I can't respond to you. I was talking to my son. My son's a hardcore Republican, blah, blah, blah. As soon as he turned 18, he's probably going to get an own arsenal of firearms. And he said, he made one of these arguments today. He said, Father, how do you respond to that? And I said, I don't know. I don't know how to respond to it. I'm not going to lie. You know, my friends ask me, how come you always win these moderated debates? And I say, I don't take debates unless I know I'm going to win. That's why I'm holding a panel on this, because I have no fucking clue how to solve this problem other than saying, can we mandate psychological health care? Can we mandate that, especially for kids in the danger zone? You know, 14 to 26. Get some laws in place and get people 100% access to great mental health and good medications, combined with some common sense laws, is all I've got. But as far as the arguments that these people make, they're solid, and they've been unfortunately proven right by the actions of not only our government, but governments close to us that we have affinity with. Those were the wrong place. And on top of them being the wrong place, instead of coming out and saying, guys, we were wrong. We were completely wrong on this. You guys protested. The protesters was right. The government was wrong. Why can't we do that? That's a big policy in our house, man. When we're off, the kids are allowed to say, Dad, you're full of shit, or you're a hypocrite, or whatever. Now, look, everybody runs their house differently, but our kids have the right to call us on our bullshit. Because I don't want to, you know why? You know why I train my kids to say that to me? Because number one, I don't want to train them to be subservient subjects of the government. And so I'm not going to make them subservient subjects of me and then send them out into the world and say, now go stand up to the government. No, I'm the government in the house. So you got to be man enough and woman enough to stand up to me and tell me when I'm full of shit. And if you have a case, you'll win the case. That has nothing to do with being, I'm not a humble person, blah, blah, blah. It's just that I don't want my kids to get dragged around by this government and the media. I want them to question authority. Well, they can't question authority if they can't question me, right? So they get to say whatever they want. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. And if I'm right, they have to apologize. It's just, it's fair game. But when you're an authority figure and you fuck up and you make a mistake, the people that you are leading will forgive you and trust you if you will fucking own it, apologize without excuses, and commit to doing better. My kids, look, they're all coming teenagers, and I promise you, there's no teenage rebellion in my house. There's none. The oldest teenager I have is we still hold hands when we're outside. He still kisses me on the lips when he's outside. We don't have that in the house. I think one of the reasons is they have no reason to rebel, because if they have a beef, they could just say it without any filter, and there's no consequence for it other than things change if they make a good argument. The American people would be a lot more willing to forgive and trust if you would come out and acknowledge your errors, acknowledge where you were wrong, acknowledge where you were inconsistent with the Constitution. If one of them would just get up and do that, that's a completely different ballgame, but you won't do that. So then everybody else is going to say, well, fuck that. I'm strapping up because I can't trust you now. You demonstrated yourself to be completely incompetent and a fuck up, and you won't admit it. You want me to pretend like that shit didn't happen. So now I'm going to strap up because I don't trust you. And then you come along and say, you dumb gun nut, you. Okay. Good luck at the ballot box, dear listener. Good luck at the ballot box. All right. Much love to everybody. I am very late for another appointment, so I've got to get to that appointment. I love everybody. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. As I've been saying, guys, you have to make sure that you're aware of your surroundings. Do not be paranoid, okay? But be aware of your surroundings. Get in and out as soon as you possibly can, okay? And we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay until we got to stick around long enough to figure this shit out together. If you're a gun nut or a gun person, look, I completely see where you're coming from. I get it. But we got to put our heads together. Coming soon, guys, we're going to have a what do you call it? We're going to have a panel debate discussion on gun control. I've referenced Elio Mike a couple times. He's going to be there. Sister Sadie's going to be there. And I think we're going to have either Dan or Tasco, because I need I need an outsider's perspective that's not an American about gun law, because I think that's very, very, very important for Americans to understand how we're perceived by the rest of the world. Okay. So that's coming. For the rest of you, who know about the other thing that we do, I try to keep the channels as separate as possible. We're gonna load up like right now. I'm gonna get Soraya, and then I think we got 6 on the board tonight. All right, and I do think we're gonna do a lightning round thing. All right, I gotta get out of here, guys. Much love to everybody. If we all love our neighbor, we're gonna be okay, huh? All right, there you go. Meantime, love your neighbor, take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.